Approve the minutes.
You want me to read?
I have one. Do you want to read the whole thing, or?
Whatever you want.
Yeah, let's just. I don't think we need to go through it. Unless somebody. What do you think, board members? Do you want to hear the minutes, or do you want to?
No, that's right.
It's okay. They were basically. I'll just sort of skim them a little bit. We agreed to expand the committee to 9. We read Libby's resignation letter. Tom Bechtel expressed his regret that his correspondence had been shared without his permission, which we don't know if that was true or not. I don't know if that should be a correction to the meeting or not. It's not.
What do you mean we don't know whether it was?
Well, it's true that he expressed his regret, but we also indicated that nobody said that they'd seen the letter. So.
Oh, well, he was speaking to people in West Cornwall.
Whatever. I don't see that as a big problem.
Okay.
A bigger problem is that they're dated October 9th. I think they should be November 13th, right? Yeah. So the vacancies.
That's what happens when you cut and paste.
Yeah, exactly. I've done that a few hundred times. Extended review of site visits. Saybrook. And then Gordon reiterated his feeling about the 4 areas of concern, which we'll continue talking about. We're going to want to look for a sense of town support. That's really where we're moving towards. So better grip on costs. That's going to come up in this meeting. Several homeowners concerned about odors. And then there's Anna Tamalfi, which you did a great job, Joanne, of encapsulating, I think. And the word urgency, I think, is the one that was most impressive to me about what her comments were. I mean, we're kind of on the precipice. I was at the EDC meeting this morning, and one of the expressions that came up was some people think West Cornwall is a dying town, some people think it's a dead town. So there is a sense of urgency, I think, about perhaps making something happen on the economic development side of things. So are there any other questions about the minutes that need correcting or commenting on? Somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes from the last meeting as Todd has reported.
Second it. Yep. Dave seconds. So motion, all approved?
Aye.
All opposed. All right. That's it. So just a couple more. We do have a communications. Let's put this off. The 3 communications I have are the 3 people who submitted letters. Mm-hmm. And there is an item on the agenda for discussing this. Could I read those then, or do they have to be done in the communications
You can do it
segment?
anytime you want.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's take care of these other. We just need to deal with the calendar. Vera wants a calendar. Can we can just go on the economic development does Tuesdays. Apparently the 13th of February instead of otherwise it's the second Tuesday of every month. Is that continues to be okay for people? Anybody have any?
Wait a second.
Yeah.
This is a special meeting. So you can have no additions to
No,
the
this
agenda.
isn't a special meeting.
Yes, it is, because it's not noticed as being, what's filed with the Secretary of State is the location, in Ian's location, and also on Thursdays. So anything that
Thursdays?
altered from that requires a special meeting.
But what do you mean Thursdays?
When we submitted our list of dates at the beginning of last year, we submitted that we were meeting at Ian Ingersoll's.
I know it's Ian's, yeah.
So
But
that
Tuesdays.
alone changes it
Does it?
and makes it a special meeting.
That's a new one. I don't.
Correct.
Okay. So no additions or changes.
No addition, but you do have to get
But what have I changed?
you have to have another special meeting to adopt your calendar, or else everything else has to be special meeting.
Wow. That's I can't follow that at all. So in other words, this agenda item can't be
Correct.
because this
Because
is,
you've already posted the agenda, which I don't have a copy of.
but it's on this agenda.
Is it on the agenda?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So
Right, so
I have
you-
the agenda.
Discuss
The agenda.
2019.
Right. Okay.
Calendar, okay,
That's
Right,
okay.
calendar is
yeah.
1B, so you're good.
yeah.
Right.
Right.
And it's pretty, for us, it's pretty straightforward. It's the second Tuesday of the month, 5 o'clock
Here.
here, provided it's available.
Right, yeah, I think it will.
Yeah. Except for the second Tuesday of February is,
13th, and so you're going to make it,
right, the second Tuesday, come on, is the 11th. Sorry, it's the 12th.
12th.
So we're going to make it the 13th.
February,
Yeah.
that's President's Day. To account for President's Day, is that what that is, or?
I don't know.
I think the state holidays have both Washington and Lincoln off, or something like that.
Right,
so
Janet
officially state
identified
holiday.
that the 11th is, or the 12th is not doable, so I'm just following that. And we'll take off July and August.
No meetings
No
in
meeting July and August, yeah. Okay, so do we need a motion for this, for the calendar?
Todd, it might
Yeah.
be better to leave July and August on, then if we decide to have the meeting, they won't have to be special meetings. We can just cancel them. What do you think of that?
I think
That
that's a
sounds
good idea.
sensible.
It's easier to cancel than it is to schedule.
I
Okey-doke.
move that we accept the calendar with all 12 months, including the change from the second Tuesday to February being the second Wednesday.
Right.
Thank you.
Is it the second? Yeah. Okay.
Second?
I second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. All right, so now we can go to this recommendations to fill vacancy, which is, I'll read the communications. You all did get the letters, right?
Yes.
Nobody's missing a letter
No?
or, the letters are short, to the point, so let me read them. I'll read Don's first. Don, thank you for your submission. Dear Todd and Gordon, I am writing to submit my name for one of the seats on the expanded board of the West Cornwall Septic Study Group, as per the committee's vote at its November 13th meeting. I believe that my long-standing community service to the town provides me with the background and experience required to make a positive contribution to the work of the study group. Further, as a full-time resident of the West Cornwall community, I believe that my presence on the board would enhance communications between the present board and the residents of the Lower River Road area. If you have any questions, please give me a call or email me. I didn't realize you had an email because it came from Tom, so now I know. Good. Yep, fine. And the Betsy Preston submitted this letter. This letter is to express my interest in being considered to fill one of the vacant positions on the West Cornwall Septic Committee. I have attended all but one of the monthly meetings held this year, which has allowed me to become familiar with the topic and issues at hand. My experience as a microbiologist puts me in a strong position to understand the scientific aspects of both the technology and environmental issues involved. West Cornwall has been my home for over 20 years. I know most of the people in the downtown area and feel I could be effective in improving communication with the community. Please let me know if you need any additional information. Regards, Betsy Preston. Thanks, Betsy. And this is from Lisa Lansing.
I thought I was just writing to you. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
That's why I sound a little irritated.
No, far from irritated. Would you rather me not read the letter? I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
No.
It's fine.
It was a very friendly letter, I thought. I was pleased to get it. Hi, Todd. I'll join the study committee, if that works for you. I'm pro, if you want my position to be clear, but I want to see good, clear analytics and financial information out before the public. I also think the town should secure financing to get the treatment plant out of the center of town and also to hook up all the properties, commercial and residential, in town. No one should have to pay to play. Let me know if this works, Lisa. So, this will be a pretty easy
We have 3.
discussion unless anybody has any objections to these letter submissions, in which case we probably would need to go into executive session, perhaps. But we can talk a little bit about, we have 3 openings, and we have 3 submissions, and they reflect what I consider to be a good cross-section of the kind of person we're trying to attract onto the committee. You know, people who live and have a vested interest in the residential part of West Cornwall, and Lisa, who's done a lot of town community work,
20 finance too, by the way.
right? Library. We're well aware of your good works here, let me tell you. Any other way to approach this? I've never done this. Yeah.
I agree with your comments, Todd, and I think it's great that 2 of those volunteers live in the immediate
Right.
neighborhood on Lower River Road. And I think it's very nice that we have a 3rd volunteer who is from out of the neighborhood
Right.
and can represent the general views of Cornwall.
Right.
So I would say all 3 would be excellent candidates, in my opinion, for us to approve.
So, without further ado, could a motion be made to accept all 3? Or to recommend to the selectmen the acceptance of all 3?
I'll make the motion. I'll second it.
So do you have can you do the wording, Joanne, of the motion, or you want?
Okay, so I say, being it's all moot, that the committee recommend the 3 submitted names, Don Bachman, Betsy Preston, and Lisa Lansing Samant, to be appointed to the expanded committee.
Okay. All those, let's see now. So that's a
Motion
motion. It
made.
needs to be seconded.
I'd second it.
Got it seconded. Dave seconded it. And discussion, any more? We've had some discussion. Is there any more discussion to be had? Everybody good on it? All right.
So we'll put this on our agenda for the selectmen's next week.
Right. Is that, the wording says to recommend to the selectmen? Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, there you go. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's good. All right, well, welcome. You'll all be included in the agenda. You get included anyway, but in any committee discussions and that kind of, you'll start to. And now at 9, the quorum increases. So we need 5 instead of, what was it, 4?
4, yeah.
Yeah, so it's important to attend meetings. So thank you very much.
So do we have a quorum tonight?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we're
Okay.
full board. This is everybody. All right, so we've got the calendar, we've got full committee, and now we're continuing discussing future roles. And this is an interesting communication came in from Steve McDonald.
All right.
Perhaps you should read this.
Yeah,
communication,
who doesn't
Todd.
have a copy of Steve's letter? Anybody want one?
Are you considering this discussion then to be part of 2A?
2A, yeah, this is a discussion vote, recommended cost analysis for additional citing suggestion. And this is another question I have, which is it a executive session kind of item? Not necessarily.
No, you're just talking about
And that's another
doing
record.
another piece of work. You're not hiring anybody
Right.
going intently. You're doing somebody who's already hired. So you're not evaluating his credentials as much as extending the contract.
Yeah, and it's a recommendation also.
Correct.
It's not an actual decision, so based on our,
What does that mean?
Well,
That
I
means
mean,
we don't have to approve this contract extension, that the Board of Selectmen can do it, is that it?
that's right. We should weigh in on whether or not we think it's an appropriate use of the money, if it's something we think it's time to do. I mean, those might be discussions to have. I just refer us to some comments I made to you guys before the agenda went out, that we're trying to narrow our focus in order to assist the selectmen in their task to identify the public will as it relates to a significant expenditure on community septic for the hamlet of West Cornwall. As I see it, there is agreement within the hamlet itself as to the value, present and future, to place a system of some kind, provided the facility can be sited remotely so that both the impact on the senses, primarily sight and smell, and community property contiguity are virtually zero. So the one site, the study we had done recommends but a single site. So in order to even begin thinking about bringing this to the general town for a vote or some consideration, there has to be some choice involved in the question asked, the ballot question asked. So without some kind of expert analysis of where another site might be possible, there's no way to even broach that question to the town, to the public. So the
Right, I mean,
idea-
it's cost and siting.
Well, cost and siting, right, are obviously
Yeah.
intricately linked. Steve came up with what he thought was the best site for the lowest cost. But it may be the lowest cost, but it turns out not to necessarily be the best site.
Or the lowest initial cost. And because we asked for operations and maintenance, remember one of the things that the guy at Hillsdale said is that very often the cheapest initial cost turns out to be far more expensive in the long term.
Right, but that's not site
Well, it is site
related.
if it's-
That could be at any site.
That's
True at
true.
any site.
But
But his,
I do have trouble understanding how this request for $7,000 additional for WMC falls under 2B when you sent this agenda out,
falls under
a while ago.
2A.
2A.
Yeah.
And this we didn't get until 1 o'clock this afternoon. So did you know that this was coming when you put that on the agenda?
Yeah, we had spoken about it. I didn't know that Steve was not coming.
Well,
So
I don't
that's
care
what
about
happened.
Steve coming. I care about how it got on the agenda with it. I mean, when we I brought up at the last
Yes.
meeting, Steve, how come you've been out here so many times? And then I heard from people in town that he was again out with you and Gordon walking properties. And I said, how are you getting paid? And it was mumble, mumble, mumble. Now all of a
I
sudden,
don't mumble.
well, then you didn't
As Nikki
answer.
Haley would answer you.
I mean, I just think that we were being misled. That's my opinion, yes.
It's pretty
And I will.
accusatory. We're not,
Well, I
No
mean,
intention to
tell me
mislead.
how I'm wrong.
well,
That's what I don't understand.
you're asking too many questions.
I'll tell you how you're wrong.
Okay.
The last meeting after personal insults to Steve, which were unwarranted, I think we made clear that he had been paid to date, even though he finished his work and his contract expired several months ago. He's volunteered his time to try to keep the process going and give the committee and the town technical information that was necessary to try to keep the process going, as clearly there was more work to be done on the project. So as of last month, the town does not owe him anything for the work done to date. What we've done as the Board of Selectmen is we've cleared our calendar, cleared our dates in an effort to assist this committee to bring this to a town decision. So we are trying to expedite the process. One of the things we did, obviously, the site team is one of the most contentious issues. So while Steve was here, he said, let's go out and take a look at potential sites. People had asked me about potentially using the old useless market as a potential site for an area. We looked at the pink house that had been offered as an area. So I said, let's walk around when the snow's off the ground and take a look at the area. So we, with Todd, walked around to look at his site to help him gather information. And
In addition, the Trinity site up above by Betsy Preston's
we
house.
did look at the adjacent land at Trinity, and we also
But
went...
why aren't other committee members invited or at least informed, Gordon?
Because what we were doing was trying to get information and gather as much information. No decisions were made other than trying to get information to bring back to the committee in between the regularly scheduled meetings of the committee. And again, this is just an exercise in trying to figure out what is out there as a exercise to learn more in the layout of the land. We also went down and looked at sites farther down River Road, and we looked at sites including all the way down on the CLMP property on the far end of the page section, and looked at those. At that point, he said, probably you're going to need, for all these things, some surveying to establish the flood zones are very important, because any of these sites have a flooding potential. That's one thing I wanted to address with him. What happens if we get a major flooding event? And again, this is just gathering information. And I asked him how much work is going to be required if we're going to try to get this thing wrapped up, as the committee obviously is spending a lot of time and energy trying to get this thing wrapped up. What is the proposal to take this, to get the work done, evaluating sites, so that the town may make a decision in the next year. So that's the origin of this proposal. No decision's been made, other than we probably have looked at some other sites, and I let him speak for himself, but he felt that probably the alternate sites of Eustace and the Pink House weren't viable sites, as were the adjacent Trinity property. But I would let him speak for himself. So he are going to look probably at the far sites out in the fields north of town, and there just wasn't enough land in West Cornwall proper to site everything that needed to be cited. So that was work that needed to be done. It was done without cost, and now you have a proposal to consider to get more information, again, to move the process forward. We identified 4 things that need to be done several months ago, and this is clearly under one of those.
So,
I do not accept that I was insulting to McDonald. Questioning an expert who is being paid is not insulting, or shouldn't be if they're competent. So I was not disrespectful in intention. If he took it that way, I think that's his problem. And I also am very uncomfortable with the idea that at the end of the meeting, when he was charged to go out and do these things, that he didn't then say to us, I will be submitting an addendum. I don't believe he thought of the addendum yesterday and had it written up this morning so we could get it at noontime today. I mean, I just...
well, wait, Joanne, you
Yeah.
can't just go on and on and on.
I can't go on and on.
No,
okay?
you can't. Nobody can. So,
Right.
you've made your comments, and we'll take them under consideration. But
Do I get
We'll
any
go-
answers to anything?
well, there really aren't any specific questions, and perhaps you could write them down and we could answer them at some point. But we've got to keep moving along here. I mean, there were no. Steve was not charged to do anything at the end of last meeting. I mean,
Do you really
didn't see
think
it
that
in
this
the
audience
minutes.
thinks he wasn't charged to do anything? I mean,
That
he was
doesn't
going to come
matter.
back. We
I don't
asked
recall
about
there being a
costs.
charge.
We asked
Yeah.
about costs and locations and things, and he sat there and shook his head yes.
And he needed to get more familiar with the town, so he came to do a walkabout, and we didn't want him to walk about on his own because he doesn't know the town, so we helped him walk about a little bit.
Thank you,
But of
Todd.
course, we wouldn't
Okay.
make any
I've had enough.
decisions without the
Joanne,
full committee.
you've talked about the problem. What's your solution?
My solution would be that we have a proposal from one expert. My suggestion would be if we got $10,000 left in the budget, which I don't remember being emphasized. If you remember when we did the last of the test holes and things and came up with some funny results, and we asked if we could do any more testing, and they said, oh no, there was no money left. I do remember that. But my suggestion is that we hire a different engineer. Just like if you went to a doctor and the doctor made a proposal, you would get a second opinion. You wouldn't go back to the doctor again and say, tell me again what you suggest. I suggest if you want to have McDonald do something, then split the money. Hire 2 people so that we get some perspective and not a single focus. That's my suggestion.
Well, it's,
Does that make any sense to you, David?
I don't agree with what you're saying. I think that,
Which part?
well, first of all, you and Steve had, some discussion. I thought that you did get somewhat aggressive as to, what he's done in the past.
Yes, we women always get aggressive, don't we?
No, this is not about women.
Yeah.
And in any case, I think that, he's done a good job. I think and he's been within the budget. He's saying if you want me to do more, it's going to cost more.
I earn my living consulting. I understand that. All I'm suggesting is that we have 2 consultants, so we have something to compare.
well, okay.
There's not enough expertise on this committee to make technical comparisons, and I think we should have.
Okay. Well, there's a mechanism for addressing that, and if that's a proposal that you're making, I'm
Okay.
assuming it's the kind of thing that a motion is made, and if it can get seconded and then voted on, if that's the way you want to take this, I don't know. I think there's a fairly clear consensus that
Well, I would
we
like to bring that motion up at a time when we have our full committee present at the table, and I would suggest that it would be inappropriate for this downsized committee, when we know we're adding 3 people to the committee, to make that decision now. And I will move that any decision on hiring or paying money out of the remaining contract be postponed until the full committee is seated.
Is there a second to that?
I second
motion?
that.
You second it, okay. So some discussion on that? Do you want to weigh in on that, seeing that you are...
Well, I think it's only fair. Geez, I don't know McDonald, that well. And I think you might want to check, you want to get a good price too, and you want to get what what it's worth. And if this is going to take forever too, it seems, it is urgent, but, I think that it might be helpful.
But my motion is that we simply postpone this vote until the full committee is seated.
I think that's true, because we're not in a full committee right now.
Is there any other discussion about this at the moment?
I don't know that we, the $10,000, I don't know if we've got enough money to be hiring 2 people more. There's not much of a budget left, and there's still some work to be done. When we
Fine, but
if
you
we start
think-
cutting the fees in half, are we cutting ourselves off at the knees here?
Well, we could find additional monies.
Well, it's hard enough to get the 50,000, so.
Well, we just spent $10,000 to get help with the POCOD. So, there does seem to be some money. But my question really is, do you think that this committee should make a judgment without the vote and support and participation of our full membership? Since we've already expressed a desire to have them join us, now we're cutting them out.
Well, but we've been sitting and, we've been through every meeting from the very beginning, and we know, to what extent Steve's been involved with this. New members wouldn't necessarily be cognizant of, what his effort's been to date.
Are we paying him past or forward?
Past or forward? What's that mean?
Well, you just said they don't know what he's done in the past. I said, are what we paying him for what he's already done, or are we going to pay him for what he's going to do going forward? And if it's going to be for the work going forward, then I think our new members would be perfectly capable of making a competent and informed decision.
Okay, any other discussion about this?
I have a question.
Okay, yeah, that's discussion.
When are they seated? Can they be seated at this meeting, or do we have to wait
No, they
until
have- yeah, they
January?
The selectmen have
Wait
to,
to the selection.
Sorry?
the selectmen
Selectmen.
have
Oh,
to
the
convene.
selectmen,
yeah.
oh, sorry.
You.
I should know better. She says as a selectman.
Select
My
women.
apologies.
You being one of them.
I apologize.
No.
That's okay. All right, any other discussion? So we'll bring this motion to a vote. You want to read it again? So
Repeat
we
the
all
motion.
know what you're saying? What, the motion?
Joanne moved that the vote on a contract be postponed until the full committee is seated.
Okay.
I second.
It's been seconded by Richard. We had a discussion. Discussion's going. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Ian?
Nay.
Okay, so you've got a vote? Is that right? or
No, Gordon
You have
doesn't
no
get to
vote.
vote.
So what happens in a tie?
It's just tight.
That was a tie.
So
Agree.
that pretty much
Well, it
postpones
doesn't pass.
If it's, I'm sorry, if it's a tie, it fails.
Yes.
It's,
That's a Robert's rule.
that's
Yeah.
Robert's rules.
All right, so we will revisit this, I guess, at the next meeting.
Did he say if it's a tie? I didn't hear what he said.
No, it failed, so
It
you won.
goes-
You won, Todd.
It failed. Oh, the motion failed.
You can go
That's correct.
ahead.
Okay. So we move forward then. All right, thank you. So let's read his letter. I'll read it out loud, and if there's, I guess we'll have to vote on the acceptance of this then, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
You wanna move it forward.
Ready? Dear study group members, WMC Consulting Engineers respectfully requests the group's consideration of this amendment to our original agreement for the performance of the water septic study. As the group is aware, additional evaluations of the potential sites for a wastewater treatment system, along with the costs associated with any system, need to be further studied. Additionally, the group is considering the performance of additional drinking water well testing to determine if existing wells are contaminated by existing septic systems. The scope of work in this proposed amendment is to further refine the costs associated with siting a treatment plant at several potential locations, including the cost of conveying collected wastewater to those sites. Additionally, WMC will further evaluate annual operation and maintenance costs associated with the potential collection and treatment system. Based upon the number of potential users of the system and considering potential grant sources, as well as the possibility of the town contributing to the cost of the system through town-wide general taxation, WMC will develop estimated annual costs per user for both capital and operations maintenance costs. WMC proposes to complete this additional work on an hourly rate and direct cost basis as follows. Engineering assistance, hourly rate not to exceed $6,000. Water quality testing as incurred not to exceed $1,000. Please note that in the budget for our original contract, we invoiced the town for a total of $40,007.48 out of a budget of $50,569.69. And therefore, there still remains $10,562.21 in the original contract limit. Should you have any questions concerning this proposed amendment to our agreement, please do not hesitate to contact us at your convenience. Sincerely, Wendell McDonald and Costello, signed by Stephen R. McDonald. Okay, so there's clearly a number of details about this letter that could have some discussion before a motion's made whether to
No,
accept
you should
it.
have a motion and then a discussion.
You want to do a motion first?
Yes.
That would be, all right, so,
Motion to accept it?
And I second that.
okay. So, accept it as written.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So is there discussion? I have a few questions. Why are we needing $7,000 if we have $10,000?
I think what he's saying is that right now, we're not beyond budget. So we wouldn't have to spend it if we would stay within the budget of 50,000, because it's $7,000 more.
The key thing to remember is the time frame, that he was hired under a grant, and that grant expired whenever it was, 6 months ago or something. In June, he wrapped up his work, so that was the end of his contract period. He did not bill the town or the grant for his full amount of the grant. So there is this money that he did not bill, but there is the funding source, which was administered by the Council of Governments, is no longer available for that. There is town funds that were raised separate from the COG fund, so I have to go, then if the committee recommends this expenditure, it will be up to the selectmen to figure out what is the procedure for funding the request.
Does it still fall within the budget?
Well, the budget doesn't matter because the grant's expired.
Okay.
But,
But there was a town meeting that authorized up to $50,000 worth of work.
okay,
With the expectation of getting the grant, and the grant would be reimbursed, and then the town would kick in money in addition to the grant. So I'll go back to Barbara and see how much is actually left out of that authorization, or what is the procedure for the selectmen to require funds or acquire funds to.
would that contract be applicable to another engineer, or is it only specific to him?
It would go specific to him because the funding actually came from the Department of Transportation. Originally, we thought it was to come to the town, then it went to the Council of Governments to administer it on request of the Department of Transportation.
Okay.
So that whole contract again was $50,000, and to get a comprehensive study done, we were impressed that it could be done for 40.
Yeah, no, I think that's worth noting, and it would be nice if it ended up in the minutes that he has.
So you're
Done the
saying,
job for
Gordon, that
80%.
if this board were to not want to hire Steve McDonald, then the money would not be available? The Board of Selectmen would not make the money available, is
No,
that
I'm
correct?
not saying that, I'm just saying that the money is not available under the old contract. If you accept this proposal, or if you want to hire another if the committee wants to look at it, have another engineer come out and look at everything for
Yeah.
an undetermined amount, it'd be up to the selectmen to then go back to the town financial authorities to see how we can secure extra money, because the current authorization has expired generally.
Are you indicating to this committee that you are in favor, as head of the Board of Selectmen, of finding the money if we endorse Steve McDonald, but not in favor of it if we were to hire someone else?
I think as a practical matter, this makes sense to me to act on this amount. I think if this board or if this group were to think about hiring another engineer, I think another engineer would not do a serious study for $3,000. They would have to spend a lot of time just reviewing the base information, and it would be likely at least over $10,000, I would think, to do it. Plus then you have Steve's amount. And again, from the peer reviews from the other towns I've talked to, Steve gets very high marks. So and plus that would take again months to hire and interview another whole engineering firm, plus you got the holidays. So we're again dragging this out for an unknown
Result.
Yep. I mean, I see hiring an engineer taking putting everything on hold for months.
Okay, can we stay specific to this letter? Does anybody have any other comments? I have another one myself.
Well, the bottom line
Yeah.
is the selectmen make the decision, no matter what. So
We're just a rubber stamp,
yeah.
or
Well,
not.
we recommend it, and a place to have discussions and air it with the public, so it's more than,
Are we asking for public input? Is that what you were indicating?
no, I'm saying that,
Oh,
responding to Richard's suggestion that it doesn't matter what transpires here, but it actually does.
Well, but they spend the money. I mean, the buck stops there with the selectmen.
Yeah, but they take into account things we talk about. But is there anything specific to the letter that, what about this issue that Torrington Area Health will do these well testings for free? I was under the impression they'd come out and test your well for free.
No, I haven't.
No?
I mean, there's an
I thought I
amount
heard that.
to do well testing
Oh, I see.
in this budget.
No, in this one, I see that's $1,000
But I mean, there
but,
was a free well testing last summer, but that was for a completely different set
okay,
of
okay. I
circumstances.
thought that they did that.
And if we can get it done for free, we'll get it done for free.
Right, well, I might bring that up with Steve, because I thought I heard, no, you know,
I think
one
it's
of,
like
who were they?
$30,
It's not
$30,
expensive.
$35. And I think, again, from the Board of Finance, a member said we should, as part of this study, if we've got time, offer that to anybody in West Cornwall that wants.
Right.
It would be free to the people, but there'd still be an expense.
Oh,
to
okay,
the
that's
town.
what I heard.
So that's the idea, that in this study area, find out what is going on.
Right.
On a voluntary basis to offer
Yeah,
a free
yeah,
well.
I think that's
to people
important,
there.
that
That's the free.
part of this would be an opportunity to get free well testing for what people in West Cornwall, so that get more
So
widespread,
they could each save $30.
or whatever, but have an incentive to have those wells tested. Anything more specific about the letter and the,
Yes, I think the letter
Request.
should not refer to the total contract price, because obviously Gordon's told us that the $10,562 really doesn't exist.
the 5,000, the 50,560
No, the
doesn't exist? Oh,
$10,562.21 in the original contract, that money doesn't exist. It has to be, Gordon has to go to the Board of Finance and work with them to find the $7,000, because the $10,000.
I agree, but can you
562.
redact that line on his letter?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got a magic marker? I got the letter right here.
I think the minutes will note that. I don't think we can tell them to rewrite a letter.
okay.
I'm not so sure I agree with that whole.
What don't you agree?
Well, 10,000 does exist. It might not
Excuse me,
exist
Gordon,
to
does it
spend it.
exist?
It might not exist to spend it,
Oh,
but it was.
Where does it exist,
It
then?
exists as,
In the original contract.
as part of the original contract, and he came in 80% or 10% under contract, 20% under contract.
yeah, because they told us
And
there
so
was no more money.
there was a savings of $10,000.
Because they told us there was no more money to do things we requested.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. But
That's why we should
I mean, it's
videotape
all a process of how tomato or tomato.
Okay, so we have
Well,
a
the town
motion.
had approved that amount.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
That
very
would be
impressive. that
An
it came.
argument for leaving it. Because the town had voted and approved it, that total amount.
And I'll tell you, the state, when they told us to do a study, you remember what they said this was going to cost? $300,000.
That's why we're in the shape we're in, Todd, because that's the state estimates, right?
It's, I think we've gotten a hell of a bang for our buck.
I agree. I think Steve's done a good job.
And okay, let's, so any more discussion about the letter, the contents of the letter? Specifics, things we want? All right, so let's hear the motion again and vote on it. Please.
Motion to accept contract as proposed by Ian Ingersoll, seconded by David Dolinsky.
I'm sorry, motion to what?
Accept contract as proposed
In this letter,
Right.
in December 10th letter.
The WMC.
This is actually an amendment to the contract. Motion to accept amendment to our agreement. That's
And you should put in there, recommend to the Board of Selectmen.
right. Motion to recommend.
Okay.
the
That's
Board
what I
of Se-
said.
Yes.
Motion to recommend acceptance of the amendment to the contract as per WMC letter 1218.
Yeah,
To the Board of Selectmen.
you recommend to the Board of Selectmen, right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
It's an addition or an amendment?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Abstain?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous. Okay. So you'll reach out to Steve on that?
Right, we'll put it on our next,
Or you'll, after your
after our
meeting?
next meeting, it'll be on the agenda
When's your next meeting?
next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
So we'll do the appointments and hopefully
Right.
have an answer from Barbara on the finances of all this.
Now, does anybody here want to look a little bit at a map of West Cornwall? Or just so we can show you some of the spots that we thought might be of value to look at? Steve will.
Different site?
Yeah, because I think at some point Steve should come out, and as a committee, we should walk it.
Sure.
And then we'll all have weighed in on recommendations.
Well, you set up your machine, let's.
Yeah, so let's take a look, see if I can get this thing going again. Do you have the map? You have the map?
I do have the map.
Right, so I've got it keyed in on West Cornwall. If anybody wants me to move it, or if you want to move around or come up closer, feel free. There's nothing static about this at all. It's just a way to, it really helps me a lot to have a bird's eye view of the village. And if you want to see, obviously that's the covered bridge, okay? That's 128 going up the hill. Lower River Road. River Road, I guess that's called. What's this called? Jug Alley, I've always. Railroad Street, okay. Here's the bend. It's right in there. I think that's Ian's shop. This is that little triangle in here. Okay, this was the original suggestion for a spot in here. That's the one that the final study recommends.
Todd,
Yeah.
on that
Go ahead.
point,
Yeah.
how deep into the bend, you're saying it was right near the road?
The site, Steve's.
Right, but how deep into the bend did Steve indicate it could go?
Well, we never got a pinpoint on this.
Because the bend is fairly deep. You can see, you know.
Tell me
even-
what you're saying about. What do you mean by that? The bend project, you mean?
Well, what we call the bend. I mean, there's this little kind of road that that you folks could describe it better than I can. I mean, this is where Steve is saying it should go.
Well, as I said, there's not a pinpoint,
But
and it has to be outside
this
the
is a
floodplain.
fairly large area.
Yeah.
So my question is, why couldn't it go deeper into the bend where it's not as obtrusive as far as the siding goes?
Well, these,
And
those are,
floodplain?
those are
Yeah, the
certainly,
lower part is the floodplain, the upper part,
those are certainly
we just determined as a
discussable.
town, we
This
can't
is one of the
can't
reasons
dig there.
to get this to a town vote. Because this decision isn't one that this committee can make, obviously. We can do some recommending. But we've gotten so much feedback about its siting in this location that it behooves us, in order to get a decision made, to come up with some alternatives.
No, I understand that. but
Right, I know you do.
I'm just questioning as to where exactly in the bend.
Well, no, I know, but if it, I mean, my assumption is that anybody who's against this project is against it anywhere here in the bend, not just at one specific spot.
But more than
Can I
that,
get-
it's
can we get
also
some
in
public
part-
feedback?
It's not possible because
The floodplain?
Well, there's a lot of it is
part
floodplain, yeah.
But the other part of it is that we can't dig there because that would be opening a can of worms.
Well, that's not entirely decided yet either, but I think it is, and I'd like public input on this, because this is what I've been hearing very loud and clear. There's nowhere in this bend area that you'd feel comfortable citing a, is that true or not?
That's true.
It's true.
So you're doing a really nice park down there they're doing this really nice park, and then you're gonna put a septic system, sewage treatment system, I'll get that correct one day,
But
above it. or-
yeah, but if we're gonna have that conversation, that's really gotta become an expert conversation. In other words, when you say a sewer, just because you say sewer treatment, that doesn't mean it's smelly, it doesn't mean it's ugly.
No,
I mean, it could be a beautiful thing,
Right, but
if we were, wanted to make it such a thing.
Yeah, it just.
If you wanted to make it
Yeah,
such a thing.
it just seems a little odd, because you're, I mean, the parks, look, they're really going to town, and it looks nice what they're doing, and then you're gonna have this.
Yeah, but
thing. I
Don,
don't-
we visited
We could
places
have a
down in
public toilet
Saybrook.
bathroom down there.
Pardon?
The building could incorporate a public bathroom in that. I mean, parks do have that sort of
Oh, is that in the
facilities.
plan for that park? I mean, I don't know, I'm not arguing, I don't know.
Yes, there is a toilet facility
But
there.
we visited places down in Saybrook that are residential condominiums, very high-end places that have sewage treatment plants that are attached garages to those facilities. They don't devalue those places.
They're more close together though, and you,
Well, yeah.
one of the things you said was it in being in a parking lot or a little shopping mall thing. This is a.
No, this was a residential setting, the one I'm talking about. But I'm not sure this is the right time for this discussion. I think it's more about realizing that the siting at this spot in here is an unacceptable one for the neighbors who live here.
Right.
So we have to come up with some others. Sorry?
Short thing on that, you read something before, I think it was a memo that you had written that referred to, and I'm quoting, sight and smell.
Right.
Okay, so along that lower river road where that bend is, all of the houses that are east of that
Yeah.
road,
All those, yeah.
and there are 3 or 4, they all look at whatever it's going to be. And in terms of smell, those of us who went up to Hillsdale smelled that plant. And
That was a completely different
It's a different
system.
technology.
There's no relationship.
Okay, it's a different technology, but are you in a position to guarantee that whatever goes in there is never, ever going to smell?
Well, the one at
That's
Salisbury's been there over 10 years. And you can, next time you're up in that town, just stop by and see.
Is that
It
in a
totally
residential
functions.
area like
It's
this?
below the school.
And now the technology has advanced well beyond that. It's right below the chapel. As you see, go up the hill from Salisbury, you'll see the chapel, and there's a road right on your right, a dirt road, and you can drive over to this building. It's just got pine exterior like a barn.
Okay, perfect.
And go up to the building, and no, really, I mean, but judge it, because wherever it ends up in town,
Okay,
it's
my
going to
question
be
is-
that kind of technology, but in an advanced version of
Right,
it.
that's fine. Is it in a residential area like this?
No,
I'm convinced enough that I'm the closest neighbor to it with my
You don't
shop.
live there.
You don't live there. You-
When I finish working there, it's going to be a residential property, okay? That's the best use of that
It has
property.
plumbing.
It has plumbing, it has a well, it has a septic system, but I'm totally accepting that's a legitimate place for it. But all the other neighbors aren't convinced that that's a reasonable place for it.
All right, well, and that's, they're
Yeah, but I mean,
entitled-
we're really, this isn't the setting for this kind of conversation, because we've had this before, you know, so I'm,
so show us the other places.
right, so
And I think
let's look at some others.
Back to somebody's question,
Yeah,
I think when we walked there with Steve, the most obvious place is close to the road because you can see that.
where
there.
you're talking about the bend
I'm
now?
talking about the bed. The most obvious place is where there's remains of some sort of.
Foundation.
There's an old foundation across the main shop. And I'm not saying you gotta go down. There's an area that they've nicely exposed now that was a old barn foundation or something. And that seems to be the.
Gordon, do you want to point it out on the map, please?
I'm not sure you can see it, but you
Right
can
at
see
the
it.
bend.
Yeah, it was just garden.
It was Joe's garden.
No, it's,
It's almost across the street from
It's
where
sort
the
of-
cars are.
yeah, it's sort of where that car is
In here?
parked, or maybe right there somewhere. So anyway, that's where he said was probably the most obvious spot, because you want to put it as close to high ground as possible.
So it's really,
Right, but I mean, this site, not this precise dot, but this area is in the final study, so there's already a cost worked up about it. And what we're going to try to do is come up with at least one other, perhaps several others, that can service West Cornwall, that are further out of town. And the place down River Road,
Yeah, I mean, then
I mean,
while
we-
you're here, we did walk around West Cornwall, we looked at.
yeah, we looked at all of this back
We
in
looked at
here,
Railroad Plaza.
all up in
there.
here, back
Is
where the
there
old
any
laundry
place
is.
behind the wish house that could be done,
We,
that it could go?
we actually studied this whole area a fair amount
I
and
own
looked at
property there, and I'd be willing to submit,
it. Here,
right behind the wish house.
you're talking
And
about.
next to
Stop.
the
That's it.
meat market there.
Right there, right here,
Interesting.
right in here.
Yep.
Who owns this? You're here?
Bianca and I own that.
And the
She
Costellos?
told me today she'd be willing, if they put something, they wanted to put something there, and just our backyard.
Right, but bear in mind, there's an owner here, and there's an owner here.
But you put it in the meat market.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I thought about
Or
it,
in
I brought that
Farnsworth.
up at one point.
We did look at Farnsworth, and I think part of the concern too is the fact that brook has had huge flooding problems, and we've been lucky that we haven't had what happened in 55 and in 38 in my lifetime. But that's one of the things, I think we're stepping back a little bit from backyards into thinking long-term. If this is a town big thing, we want to make sure we're siting in a place that is as resilient to all this stuff that everybody seems to be getting more and more of nowadays in terms of floods and rains and stuff. And my impression is that brook, right where Todd's pointer is,
This here.
when it floods, it really wants to go straight. It does not want to make that corner.
This
And
is
that-
Millbrook?
This
This
is
one,
Millbrook, and twice it's jumped its bank, gone down either side of the brook, and taking a couple of houses with it. Lucky it didn't take out the bridge. It went either side of the bridge. Who was telling me? Jack Preston was telling me that it went around the pink house, sliced a big hole in the main street.
I saw that.
Yeah, it filled-
Real
filled up-
vulnerable,
filled up my house.
real vulnerable area there. And again, Richard, I think one of the things, we'll look at all the sites, but I think if we're spending a lot of money, we want to take that into consideration, but I appreciate you offering a site.
Yes.
And maybe there's another spot near there that's not quite on the bank. We did look
But
like.
how would residents of West Cornwall feel if it found its way away from Lower River Road, but still within the town?
You're still in.
Density of the town.
You're still in residential West Cornwall.
Right, okay. Well, that was one of our concerns as we were walking.
These things are now located immediately adjacent to residential areas down on the coast and other places where they put this new technology. They have it right there. It's right next to you now, right? I mean, from your house, we don't know where it is, but most houses have a septic system right underground, immediately adjacent to them.
So,
And if they overflow, as Mary's did in my parking lot at one point, it smells.
well, then.
It's
you
a lot
repair
less
it.
likely to happen.
But then you repair it. I mean, septics are everywhere. They just go under the.
Well, I'm just addressing your
Okay.
concern that it cannot absolutely be in a residential area when we know for a fact, and we've seen it in reality, exist in other locations. So to arbitrarily rule out all of West Cornwall because it's residential is unrealistic.
Well, it's very realistic. If you look at it in terms, and you weren't at the last meeting, but I brought up the point that for everybody who is living in close proximity to this system, their house value is compromised. I mean, there's no question about that.
I would say their house
I think you should.
house values have been
We have a
compromised
rule.
regularly for the last 20 years as one business after another goes out of business. The properties down there are worth a lot less now than they were. And I own 2 properties, and I know what the values are.
Conversation about that again sometime, not here.
I'm just saying, it's going to increase the value.
I-
all
All right,
the
let's
property.
move on. Let's move on. We've
I
had
have a
this.
question about the floodplain. In 1955, how high did the water go at the bend?
It certainly got in there. I mean, most of Lower River Road was inundated. I mean, the buildings are still there, but River Road, I mean, there's pictures of people fishing, you know, on
I'm
Lower
sure
River
that
Road.
would flood.
The
Yeah,
parking
I mean,
lot
that
would have been
was-
under.
I mean,
think,
you look,
Yeah.
you look at the
That's
problem
why you have to
with
be up in the.
that is,
I got it, yeah.
again, the
it's a
river
federal
is
floodplain now.
aiming right towards the bend, and it has to
And
make
so
a
it's
left.
right next to
Look
the,
all the way
uh,
there.
You
Where
look
we
right
are?
next to the library.
Lower.
Is in
See,
the
what happens is
floodplain.
all that velocity, which we haven't
Down
seen,
here?
is keep on going, keep on
Then-
going.
It's just
See,
crashes, yeah.
it's going right to that spot, and then
Yeah.
we're telling it because it's hitting that rock embankment, you've got to go 90 degrees west. It's
More
going to
than
say,
90.
I'm going to go wherever I want to go. Watch out, here I go. So, you know, I think that's a real consideration, and we don't.
But technically, the field right next to the library is in the flood zone.
Yeah, I mean, you're right in floodplain, and one of the things I think Steve was talking about doing is actually getting some surveying done, a day of surveying to delineate where the floodplain is on some of these different sites, which is really important because it's hard as just an ordinary person to see that. But when we did do some work when we were trying to put a septic into the library, and the floodplain is about, the 100-year floodplain is about where the road is there. So everything on the west side.
Yeah, we
with
have
the
isn't
library
there
is
a
the
map in
floodplain.
the town hall with that showing that?
We have a map, but it's really vague. It needs to have field verification.
What do you
But
need?
we did survey that, the area, the lawn right by the library, and that was right on the edge of the floodplain. It's not in the floodplain itself, and it's a 100-year floodplain. And Irene was a 100-year flood. I mean, we're talking 55 and 38 being a 250-year floods that we've already seen.
Actually, in times of our own memories, both 83, I think it's 83, 82, 83, and Irene are in the top 5 or 6 of the Housatonic River's most highest levels. I think 38, 55 are the 1 and 2, maybe there's sometime in the 1 or something. But Irene and 83 were quite high. That's one issue. That's one issue is the height of the river in terms of the placement of the building being out of that floodplain. And the other thing is the brook, and they are sort of two separate things. The brook probably has a greater potential for jumping its bank than, or doing damage than the river does, because the river's going to come up quite high, but the brook will be very quick and do its damage relatively quickly, and then be going down within hours, I mean, almost not hours.
Yeah.
So I think it's, being near the brook has a separate set of critical issues that would have to be understood by the hydrology of the brook.
Another site that we looked at, based on a lot of the comments that are being made right now, was quite a ways outside of town, so we're going down Lower
We'll go
River.
south, Tom, we did look south on Trinity property. Just past Betsy's house there, because that seemed like, what
Yeah.
about Trinity?
The triangle, you mean?
Or just south there.
Keep going south.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go south,
This-
there's an area there,
We went in here, and
yeah, which he
But
felt,
that's-
there's a lot of wetlands, and a lot of drainage coming off that.
that's close to houses again.
Right, it was neighbored, but again, we did look at that.
Not to
Edge
mention
of-
trucks in and out, and all of that. I mean,
Access to that.
I mean, pretty much anything in here, right? Meaning the town area, anything in here, and moving up a ways where the more homes are, has the same response. It's like, okay, but not so near my house, please. So we're hearing that.
You mentioned Railroad Plaza. Were you thinking of putting it under the paved area there? Was that what?
No,
you-
we just we did all these saw
What
houses
about
building.
Right, I mean, the idea there's a building that could be used, but then, you know, the barn behind Mother's Cafe, but again, you probably are taking up a bunch of, part of the other problem you run up against, as I showed West Cornwall to prospective businesses the last month, is the parking whole thing. And Steve's comment too, is
Right.
the septic is bad, the parking's maybe worse.
Yeah,
for
we looked-
businesses, so you
we
don't
looked
want to
here.
like chew up parking with septic. So
Right behind
it's
the-
real tight anyway to think about a restaurant, which would be nice in River Plaza again, but if you start putting a plant, it just, with the property lines and the parking requirements for both Uslers, the Pink House, and River Plaza, it was just really tight trying to see how you could squeeze it in there.
But can't you put the,
You can put some stuff underground, but again,
Yeah.
you've got some parking.
So, once again, in the interest of moving along and
Right.
creating low-high parameters, the low, as I keep coming back to, the Bend, it's the cheapest, it's the closest, it has a lot of public antipathy, but that identifies one end of this idea, and the other idea we came up with on our walk, and as I said, it's certainly something that as a committee we all ought to go on at some point, is somewhere down in here. Now when we had been there, it had been more or less in this spot. Recently you've talked about a place even further that
Yeah,
direction.
if you look up,
Which is
you
high.
go visit
Here?
Beautiful River Road. All right, we can go back down to the woods. See, there is this whole area that CLMP owns that's south of those fields by the river, which is nice. But again, it's close to the river. You can see how close that is. It's also, again, close to houses. So again, we're probably annoy a whole new group of people. And I do think there is there is something of moving people's problems down the road close. So the other way the land lies is if you go up the road there, Todd, see where there's a hedgerow there, right there, there's a gate that goes in. In that area, the fields are actually higher. It rises up, so that's the high point of the area. And you can see there's overgrown area there that you could probably put something in. Again, it's away from people's houses. The fields are some floodplains, so again, it would have to be verified by a surveyor as far as, does that make sense? But it is higher ground than by the woods. So, and what I like about this from a flood perspective is you have a lot of wide open area there that is higher than the river. The river itself is trying to go south. It's not going to be the first place that floods. It may flood.
Is that CLMP too?
Yeah, CLMP owns that, and we said it took us 10 years to get permission to put in the park in the Bend. So that's going to be another whole consideration as opposed to this fine gentleman who says you can use my land. They're probably going to have a whole procedure and take time to do it, but I have called them up to ask them if they would consider, that land for somewhere. There's also other land that, is screened and stuff, but the advantage is right there is you're probably 700, 800 feet from anybody's house.
And you're elevated, you said.
And
more,
you're elevated.
More elevated than this.
So it's not going to be the first place to
spot
flood.
here.
But Steve also indicated, the cost
The
of
cost-
taking it up there, it's
pumping.
not
Well,
so
that's-
much, and pumping it up there is gonna,
Yeah, you're going to add.
Well, that's
significant.
why
But again, that's-
we're gonna look at this,
Yeah.
because this will establish the other end. This will
Yep.
be the Cadillac version of what it is, where we're trying to get to. And that would be once we have those two things, that might be an opportunity to create a ballot where a town could weigh in on whether or not we want this at all. The low end might be way too expensive. Then we know, but the low
And then
end,
maybe we'll find somebody else will volunteer.
Well,
something
actually,
that-
we could persuade maybe Sue Costello to give up the meat market.
Yeah, or something. Maybe there's another
And
site.
I would-
Well, yeah,
And
so-
we could combine that with our property.
right,
And my wife said, fine, let's do it,
right,
you know?
right. But, so perhaps when Steve does his work, he'll come up with 2 or 3 other sites, and then we'll have enough to,
And the bottom line is you've got to get how much it's going to cost.
Right.
'Cause
okay, so I think we've,
Can I ask Gordon a
Yeah.
question? How would the negotiations with Eversource, I guess now, be different on the Bend site since they still own that, right?
Yeah.
No, keep that too, up there.
Excuse me. How would the negotiations be different on that plot versus this plot?
I don't know, it's up to them what they're I mean, they own it, and what they, I said, would you
Okay.
consider it? And the first question is, will they consider it? And then I imagine the town would have to
Okay,
buy
so
a
it's the
piece of it.
same negotiation.
And the same person, so, you know,
Timeframe
what,
and things,
and
okay.
again, they're open, they just take a really long time, and there may be there's state approval if involved, if they actually have to sell it as opposed to lease it. It's easier to lease the property than it is to,
Yeah.
whatever,
These-
whether USDA will finance.
But these again
system
are
on those.
details to get into once we
Right.
have a clear signal
Right.
that the town has the stomach for this concept. And I think we need to get that question answered here pretty soon.
Gordon, on the southern end of the fields, is there a Leantinal Land Trust parcel there?
Yeah, I wondered
that too.
I don't know if there is.
Say that again, southern end of where?
Southern end of the fields, the southernmost end,
Down here?
and the wooded, I don't know if it's the wooded area or
I mean, CLP owns all the open land, that's all I know.
Whose land trust did you say?
Leantinal.
Leantinog.
Maybe they do, I can find that out easy enough.
Is that the Indian reservation,
No,
Leantinog?
that's Scotticoke.
Uh-huh.
Leantinal is a land
A
trust.
private land trust based in New Milford, I think.
In Kent.
With an
Okay.
Indian name.
I'll find out who owns that, maybe the CLP doesn't own that.
Okay, enough on this subject. Strategy to identify immediate users. So that has to do with this 2B. Steve has indicated that he needs to know, in order to come up with a cost per user, he needs to know the number of users there may be. And Gordon has always indicated that it's very important from his perspective that once the project shows signs of moving forward, or at least in order to get the project to show signs of moving forward, you'll have to indicate how many people would immediately buy into it. And Gordon said that you can undertake to identify these people for
We have
the
it,
group, right? So we won't have to do it as a group.
Correct, I
Yeah.
propose the selectmen's office would send out a letter to everyone in West Cornwall with some professional help saying the town considering proposing a, septic proposal, it will cost some money to hook up and some average fees for user fees, standard average things for the, what's typical of a system in northwestern Connecticut, and then see who's in. Again, that's, those would have to be, those aren't final figures, but there will be some cost to the users.
Right, so,
Well, before
the
this whole process started, I had called everybody.
right,
on
that
Main
was a
Street
good,
and Railroad
good
Square.
stab at it, but I think we're gonna try to get more
Get something-
specificity, right?
If you put a number there, that would more solidify it. A
Right,
guess,
and we'll
guesstimate.
It's
see.
a guess.
And my feeling too is that it will be affordable to hook up, but if people have to do it later, then it may cost you more to do it later than it does. We want to try to get as many people involved, and also the other thought too is if it has to run down River Road, then you have some other potential users along River Road. In fact, somebody came in looking to do something they couldn't do along River Road because there wasn't adequate septic this 2 weeks ago. So again, there may be a couple more times
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and it may open up more future use.
Yeah, it's a
of
very
things,
living
so-
investigation, if you ask me, because who knows what bright ideas people may have, but, all right, and then I just,
I would ask that maybe this committee would have an opportunity to review that letter before
Absolutely.
it goes out.
Yes, I think probably if we get it by January, hopefully get it by January or February, but you would look at it.
Good.
before it goes out.
all right, and then, so, the final recommendation, I know it may seem a little early to be talking about this, but it's not too far off. What is that actually gonna look like to the selectmen? Is that gotta be a report of some kind, or can it just be a brief written something and then Steve McDonald's recommendations? I mean, what are we looking to create here? What's the product that's gonna come out of these efforts
Well, I
for
think-
you guys?
I think we've discussed it. I think what the committee's looking for is some public decision on whether, after we get more information, whether the town would generally proceed with this type of project. We're not gonna have all the answers, but we will have more information and then get a, yes or no vote, whether they want to do any project, and then maybe have a couple options where a plant may be.
Mhm.
Something as simple as that. I think we don't want to and again, we would have to,
Right.
the wording thing would have to be legal, but it would be, to be an information vote more than it would be actually authorizing an expenditure of money.
Right.
At least that way, if you get a convincing direction, then you've got wheels.
Okay, so in January, we'll start to look more closely at crafting that final product
Next meeting is-
delivery, second Tuesday of January, whatever that is.
Oh, January, okay.
Does anybody know? What December, it's the 14th. The first is, I'm sorry, it's the 15th. No, it's the 8th. The first is a Tuesday, the 8th is a Tuesday.
January 8th.
January 8th, yeah. Okay, guys. Oh, public
we,
comment. We've had a bunch of...
Just one question.
Oh,
Do
okay.
we owe any communication with Steve?
You can say hi, Merry Christmas.
Well, Gordon's going to reach out to him
I-
about the results.
Yeah, I think Todd can say we've recommended this to the committee's recommended
Okay,
this
I'll
to
do
the
it.
selectmen, and they'll vote on
Right.
it.
Oh,
I
we
just-
recommend, and then when they...
Okay, good.
I'm sorry, when did you say your meeting, Gordon? The selectmen will
We're
meet?
meeting on
Next
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Okay. So, public comment? No, good. All right. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. I know it's dark and cold, but
And that's,
I hope it's worth it. See you later.
Okay.